But we have an important election on our hands in this country, and tonight is all about discussing the importance of accessibility. This is the All Candidates Debate in Town Hall on accessibility, and I welcome you here tonight. This is an organization the organization that's put this on is the Manitoba League of Persons with Disabilities, the Accessibility and Inclusion Ministry team here at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Winnipeg, and those are your hosts this evening. A couple of housekeeping notes, I'll just repeat them. There is a ramp at the front of the church. There is the accessible washroom. When you go through the back door and go straight across through the door, it's on the first room to the left. You can see the pink signs there. The additional washrooms are downstairs. They've been all labeled for you, gender neutral, anywhere in the space if you need to use the restroom. When you go downstairs, I checked it out for you. You'll walk, you'll turn left, and you'll feel like, should I be here? And you might open a door and see the maintenance room. Eventually, you're going to clearly see the washroom. So follow the lights, turn left, you go sort of under a stone arch, and then there you are. And there's clean multi-stalls down there if you do need to use the restroom at any point during the event. We're also providing, as we mentioned, ASL interpretation, which you can see. So we thank our interpreters tonight. There are 2 of them here helping with the event. And there's a limited Zoom option as well for attendees that can't join in person. So what we see in the room, about 50 of us here, there's an equal or greater amount of people who are joining us online tonight. And we'll be taking part that way and listening to what the candidates have to say. My name is Marcy Marcusa. I host the morning show at CBC Radio, which is also now on YouTube and everywhere else. So they're making me brush my hair in the morning. But I'm grateful to be here. I'm a big believer, obviously, in democracy. And I'm also a big fan of those who put their names forward. Because putting your name forward in this fashion, any of the folks on the stage can tell you tonight, is a very big undertaking to put yourself out there, to talk about what you believe in and what you believe is the right direction, in this case, for the country. So thank you very much, candidates. If we can give them a round of applause. So MLPD is a provincial, for those that you don't know, not-for-profit organization that promotes accessibility and inclusion for people of all abilities. The organization celebrated 50 years in our province this year, dedicated to making fully accessible Manitoba, where everyone, no matter their ability, is provided the same rights and freedoms. It's important to note that not everyone with an accessibility barrier identifies as a person with a disability. For the purposes of the discussion tonight, we will be using the term disability. And so let's say good evening to our candidates and acknowledge the land on which we stand. Here we are on Treaty 1, the traditional lands and waterways of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji, Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as I call them, the original citizens, the homeland of the Métis. We respect all the treaties that were made here, and we also respect all the locations where we're taking part tonight. I mentioned people are on Zoom, and also we're grateful to live and to work and to interact here on this land together. So why are we here in 2025 to talk about this? Well, the organizers of the event want to keep a spotlight on diversity, on equity, on inclusion, and on justice, and especially, they say, in difficult economic times. With more than 8 million people living with disabilities in Canada, those that put tonight's questions and event together, I believe it's critical to get those questions into debate format, into public format like this, where people can come and participate. And they feel that these questions have often been excluded by leaders' debates in past elections. The format for tonight's debate, before I introduce our candidates, and I'm hoping I should have asked this early, but everyone can hear me okay? Good. Not too loud? Okay, great. The format for tonight's debate will be as follows. Each speaker will have an opening minute and a half for opening statements. Then we have 3 questions. After they're read, each of you candidates will have 2 minutes to respond. Now, we went over this, I'll just repeat it. And then a rebuttal, 1 minute each. There will be some lightning round questions at the end in which you respond yes or no. Try out your little paddles there, everybody. There you go. So the red is the no, the green is the yes, and we'll try to add some of those questions in as well. We have timekeepers tonight, Ella and Carlos in the front row. You guys want to show them what that 30 seconds is going to look like? When we get down to 30 seconds in any sections, can't miss it. Ooh. Big yellow sign. That's pretty big. And what's going to happen if they go over after the time's up? Oh! More cowbell. More cowbell. Ladies ladies and gentlemen, I'll do my official welcome and then we'll get started with our opening statements. So we're 15 minutes behind. We expect our event to wrap right around 8:15 this evening, given that we're starting just a touch late. So tonight, the organizers did extend invitations to all of the parties. The Conservative Party and the People's Party of Canada were invited to participate tonight. They did not respond to the request. We do, however, have, just before they do their opening remarks, if you could hold your applause, I'll introduce each candidate and then we'll give them a warm official welcome. We have Cam Scott to my right, representing the Communist Party of Canada, running in Winnipeg South Centre. To the right of him, we have Leah Gazan, who is with the NDP. She is the incumbent in Winnipeg Centre. We have beside her Gary Gervais, who represents the Green Party of Canada and running in Winnipeg Centre, and Ian McIntyre of the Liberal Party of Canada, who is running in Elmwood, Transcona. Please give them a warm welcome. You ready? All right, let's begin. It's time for your opening introductions. We drew straws. We will begin with Cam to the right here. And I've been told I can use the first name, but I'll probably switch to Mr. Scott. So Mr. Scott, you have 1 minute to tell us about yourself by way of introduction.
Sure, thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Communist Party of Canada. We're a small but a venerable party, the second oldest in the country, and we've been a very important part of progressive politics, one of the initiators of the fight for employment insurance and so on, and our calling today has to do with the obvious fact that it needs to be extended and defended still. We're a party of action, and we run in elections to hold policy discussion accountable to the popular movements in which we're active between elections. Were we elected, we'd happily govern as part of a progressive bloc, but for now we'd be happy to see our furthest reaching demands implemented by progressive MPs with whom we share a longer goal. We don't see disability as a discrete issue or a special interest. When we talk about drastic housing shortfalls and the need for rent controls and massive investment in publicly owned housing, when we talk about full employment backed by a guaranteed livable income, when we talk about the fight back against private interests in healthcare and the necessity of defending and expanding healthcare, we know that all of our policy proposals need to pass the basic test of direct relevance to those impacted by disability, which is most people in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And now, Leah Gazan, 1 minute for your opening statement.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leah Gazan, and I'm the NDP candidate for Winnipeg Centre, which I've had the honor to represent since 2019. When I was asked to participate in this debate today, I immediately said yes. I immediately said yes because we have a human rights crisis in this country, and that includes the rights of those with disabilities. Canada still fails to uphold the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, something that we are obliged to do within our Constitution. One of the reasons why I have fought since being elected for a guaranteed livable basic income to lift those living in poverty out of poverty. Also, I know that we will be talking about discrimination and also racial discrimination as it coincides with disability tonight, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know the cowbell. And now we'll go to Gary Gervais of the Green Party.
Hi, I'm Gary Gervais. In my day job, I own Heartland International English School, which is an English school for international students. Do I get to start again?
Yes, you do get to start again. We're going to start the time again for Mr. Gervais because of the microphone issue. Great. Thank you very much.
Sorry, that's the way I hog more mic time. Yeah, Gary Gervais. I own Heartland International English School, which is an English school for international students in the Exchange District. And as I was reflecting on this, the policies here, and it's really important to the Green Party, or the issue, I thought back to my time in Japan, and I was struck by some things when I was there around disability. One was that they have fantastic infrastructure for sight-impaired people. The little tactile pavement yellow bumps all over the country, literally all over the country. Yet the high schools I was in were three-story schools, and the kids in wheelchairs had to go to separate schools. And so that to me really brings home the fact that policy matters. And what we're talking about tonight impacts how people live their lives. So the Green Party is really happy to be here because we envision a country where everyone can live, work, and thrive in an accessible, inclusive community. And we're committed to making that a reality.
Thank you. And now, finally, for opening statement, we have Ian McIntyre representing the Liberal Party of Canada.
Thank you, Marcy. Thank you for the invitation here. Thanks to the organizing committees. Welcome here and welcome to our friends on Zoom. My name is Ian McIntyre. I represent the Liberal Party of Canada, and I am the candidate for Elmwood Transcona. I'm a former teacher, retired, and I worked in resource with kids who had cognitive, physical, and other disabilities, and so I'm well aware of some of the stigma as well as the discrimination that's associated with that. I look forward to being able to talk about the disabilities benefit that will be coming into life in July, and I think that'll be all for now because I'll have more to say later. Thank you, miigwech. Merci.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you for sharing of the microphone as well. As I mentioned, we drew straws to see the order of responses, and then we'll go to our right with the responses and the rebuttals. I'm about to read 3 questions. We'll start with the first, of course. Each of you candidates have 2 minutes to respond, and then we'll have 1-minute rebuttals. And so we hope we'll spend 15 minutes per question in this tonight in our format. The questions have been worded, researched, and organized by the group putting on tonight's event. So the first person to respond, I'll just make sure our mic's in a row, is to my right, Cam Scott of the Communist Party, and then all of you will have a chance to respond. So the question and the background is this. 27% of Canadians and Manitobans have a disability or impairment, according to the latest data from Statistics Canada. The Accessible Canada Act is an essential tool to support the accessibility of federally regulated organizations. If elected, what will your party do to support, enforce, and strengthen the impact of the Accessible Canada Act? Mr. Scott, you have 2 minutes.
Well, for our part, the Accessible Canada Act comes up against many of the same overarching difficulties as every attempt at democratic control of the institutions that shape our everyday lives. The Act concerns organizations under federal responsibility. So its standards and their enforcement simply don't extend to the many areas of life that ought to be a public concern but are left at present to entirely private management and the diktats of the profit system. We need to think holistically about disability, and we believe that capitalism commends solutions of an individual scale. And it's very, very hard to take these things in hand under the present system. The Act proposes a barrier-free Canada by 2040, but it doesn't name housing, which has been left almost entirely to private markets and to private management for decades, on decades of increased disparity and dereliction. It's well known that most people living with disability face great difficulty finding housing and with far fewer options. So we believe that accessible housing can't be left to the caprice of corporate landlords. So we wouldn't just strengthen the Act, but buttress it with legislation to recognize housing as a human right and a public utility. Millions of units of rent geared to income housing should be subject to the Accessible Canada Act as federally regulated space. As urgently, the Act concerns barriers to employment. We know that disability is a labor issue and that many workers with a disability, depending on very many interrelated factors, are uniquely exploited and excluded by employers. So our full employment strategy with a guaranteed livable income to replace provincial welfare and disability programs that keep people below the poverty line would be based on a massive public employment strategy. This too to buttress the Act, which presently leaves out most private corporations. It's a very obvious respect in which we can't imagine legislating accessible workplaces under capitalism, which affords more freedom to employers than rights to workers, including training and accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And now we'll go to the right, as we've pre-decided, and Leah Gazan of the NDP, same question. We're getting feedback from somewhere. I think it's this microphone, perhaps.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
And the question, the same, is what will your party do to support, enforce, and strengthen the impact of the Accessible Canada Act? And you have 2 minutes.
Yes, thanks very much. The NDP supports the Accessible Canada Act. However, we know that there's been a continued failure to address the implementation of the Act, which we are obliged to do to uphold at the very minimum the Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that Canada has signed on to. This includes every public service and every employer to make sure that they are accessible. But we know there continues to be barriers accessing services and employment. And we know as a result of a culture of ableism, there's still a lot of discrimination in the labor market. That needs to be acknowledged. These barriers need to be named. And the government needs to enforce obligations under the Act and hold organizations accountable when they fail to meet timelines. And I would include also in that residential properties, a more affordable housing with rent geared to income that is accessible. I just met with seniors at Lions Place and we talked about the importance of having rent geared to income accessible units. We've seen shocking public examples where corporations have not been held accountable. For example, Air Canada and their failure to provide accessible transportation. It was actually disability advocates that brought that to light. That is unacceptable, and corporations need to be held accountable when they violate the human rights of all persons, including persons in the disability community. And this enforcement must be led by disability advocates and those with lived experiences whose voices are almost always excluded from the table. And I say that's important because we see that with the Canada Disability Benefit. It seems that the government has made decisions about that benefit without the voices of those that it'll impact, and I'll speak more about that later on in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Gervais of the Green Party, 2 minutes. What will your party do to support, enforce, and strengthen the impact of the Accessible Canada Act?
Okay, thank you for the question on this critical issue. For those 27% of people living with a disability or impairment, accessibility isn't just a policy matter, it's a daily reality. The Accessible Canada Act is a strong foundation, but the Green Party of Canada knows there's much more to be done. If elected, we will work to strengthen and enforce the Act to make it truly effective. We'll ensure that federal bodies operating in Manitoba, like Via Rail, Canada Post, and CRA, etc., are fully compliant with the accessibility standards. We'll increase funding to the Accessibility Commissioner and support independent oversight led by people with disabilities. Manitobans deserve timely action. We'll push for a faster implementation of accessibility requirements in transportation, communication, and public services. No one is left behind while using federal services. Or so no one is left behind. In communities across Manitoba, urban, rural, and northern, we'll fund accessibility improvements in housing, workplaces, and community infrastructure, helping remove physical and systemic barriers. We'll ensure Manitobans with disabilities are directly involved in shaping federal accessibility policies that affect their lives, from consultation to enforcement. The Green Party will address how disability intersects with poverty, indigeneity, and rural access challenges, issues especially relevant across Manitoba. We'll center justice and inclusion in all our accessibility work. The Green Party of Canada envisions a Manitoba where everyone can live, work, and thrive in an accessible, inclusive communities. We are committed to making that vision a reality.
Thank you. And now finally to the Liberal candidate representing the Liberal Party, Ian McIntyre is here. The question, what will your party do to support, enforce, and strengthen the impact of the Accessible Canada Act? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, it was only a short time ago when the Accessibility Act was pronounced, and since then, 8 provinces and territories have come on board and are now involved with the federal government in terms of following that Accessibility Act. So that is a big step forward. And the goal of it is to make society at large accessible. So how do we do that? Well, within the Liberal plan, we have a program called UTIP, which is the Union Training and Innovation Program, which enables individuals, women, people of color, Indigenous, and people with disabilities to become apprenticeships, and there's $8,000 grants for that. And following that, there's $10,000 grants for the companies that hire those apprentices. So that's a step in the right direction. Minister Fraser, who was our housing minister, put forward guidelines for housing to make them accessible. So we have, from Minister Fraser, design catalogs for homes that have accessibility built into them. And that money must be used for accessibility. And so will only be provided when that accessibility is done. So we have that countermeasure to make sure that the companies are following the guidelines that are put forward. Over 4 million people with the disabilities are working, and that's not the entire population. But we have to remember that there's those hidden disabilities that people make sure that their employer doesn't know, or people that they're working with. Thank you. Time's up. Bye.
Rapping before the cowbell. Thank you.
I was on a roll.
You filled the time.
Candidates will now begin where we'll start again with Mr. Scott and go back down the line. Each of you has 1 minute to add, if you'd like, to rebut what you've heard. If you heard a candidate say something you'd like to challenge, but you'll each have equal time in this section. So Mr. Scott, you're first, representing the Communist Party. You have 1 minute.
I don't wish to. No, I don't wish to. I don't wish to rebut. A thing I've heard so much is I think that I'm continually interested in the clarity that everybody has about these issues, and yet we see how sluggishly they proceed. You know, we know that something has to be done. People name very many of the same problems. I suppose I would add something more about accessible housing. Here we see capitals like Sussex and so on apply for above guideline rent increases, and they'll put down some vomitous carpet or install some cabinetry that you don't need to justify a $300 rent increase that nearly no one can afford. But there's been no pressure at all to force them to retrofit each and every one of their facilities at their own expense for the sake of accessibility. And I think that things like this need to be taken in hand urgently as well.
Thank you for introducing the term vomitous carpet into the debate. We got to have a moment of levity, right? not to make light of what you said, but just the phrase. All right, let's continue down. Leah Gazan of the NDP, you have 1 minute to add or rebut.
Yes, thanks very much. I also wanted to talk about how programs have been linked to somebody working, like the value in somebody's right to live in dignity is dependent on their working. Not everybody's able to work 5 days a week, but we have an obligation to uphold the charter in this country, including the Article 7, to ensure that everybody lives in dignity and security. I put forward a bill in the last Parliament to develop a framework for a guaranteed livable basic income. We know the disability benefit is not enough. People shouldn't have to be placed in a position in the first place to have to prove that they're disabled enough to get the benefit, and then the benefit they're offering is not adequate. So I, along with my colleagues in the NDP, all who support a guaranteed livable basic income, will continue to push for a guaranteed livable basic income to lift those in poverty out of poverty.
Now to the Green Party candidate, Gary Gervais, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, I think part of this, and not to be anti-capitalist and support my communist friend, but some of these policies at the national level, I think they're there and they're just not being implemented or enforced, for example. My mother used to manage a seniors apartment building. It was just apartment. There wasn't really any services there, but it was nonprofit housing. And the rents were really affordable. And they just allowed the nonprofit to expire and a corporation to come in and buy up that housing and crank up the rental rates. Again, I mean, there's a place for the free market here, but in that kind of situation, it's to try and build that 100-unit apartment block now would be, tens of millions of dollars. Where it was there, they just needed to keep the, nonprofit housing in place. So I think a lot of this is just pragmatics, and a lot of the stuff is in place. We just need to be thinking about it and making it a priority.
Thank you, Mr. Gervais. And the final minute to question 1 to Ian McIntyre of the Liberal Party of Canada. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Budget 2024 provides for $240 million to be used to eliminate the cost of doctors' slips. Doctor slips that that you would have to go to in order to get your disability benefit, which would have to say I am 100% or 50% disabled. And so the government has provided the money for that. There's also a fund, $200 million, to make churches and community centers more accessible with ramps and further infrastructure within the buildings. And the nice thing about it is I think we seem to be all on side. Now, who's going to be able to do it? I think that becomes the question.
Thank you. All right, thank you, candidates. This closes the first question. As I mentioned, we have 2 more, the same format, although we'll have a different starting order and a different response order. How's everybody doing out there? Good? Good. There's refreshments at the back. We're pretty casual here. If you do want to get up, as long as you're respectfully quiet, because the candidates want to be heard, you can grab a water. And of course, there's at the back, should you need something. I don't like the thought of folks sitting on their hands and, waiting. So that's possible if you do need to quietly do that. It's time for our second question. And it is this. And this time, the first person to respond will be Leah Gazan. And the question is, if elected, how quickly will your government honor its legal obligations to provide long-term funding for Jordan's Principle and resolve the critical backlog of applications and payment delays? Leah Gazan of the NDP, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. We know that there has been ongoing human rights violations against Indigenous peoples in all areas of health care, which revealed itself in substandard care in the case of Jordan Anderson. And we are currently witnessing a massive backlog in Jordan's Principle cases that have mounted to over 25,000 cases in Manitoba, something that's impacting many children and families in Winnipeg Centre. And I can tell you some of the funding that's provided through Jordan Principle funding is money that is saving lives. And as noted by Acting Grand Chief Betsy Kennedy, she said, in quotes, Canada's unilateral approach to Jordan's Principle has brought us to this crisis point. Again, going back, much of the decisions that are made are not made with the voices that are made or that are mostly impacted by it. They're unilaterally made. And I have to say the Liberal government has not has not honored their obligations that were laid out by the court. This was not done in good faith. This was done as a result of a court ruling. Yet there continues to be a backlog and a crisis of applications and payments that are going out. And I have personally, in fact, asked many questions in the House. I've written letters to ministers on behalf of the organizations and families because of their failure to meet their legal obligations to provide for Jordan's Principle. And I know that this will continue to be a priority for the NDP and my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear from Ian McIntyre of the Liberal Party of Canada to the question, if elected, how quickly will your government honor the legal obligations to provide long-term funding? Oh, I miss Gary. I knew I'd do that. For Jordan's
You
Principle.
did say you were going to do
I wore
that.
them in the green room. I'm like, at some point.
We told you we'd let you
Okay, yeah, exactly. I'm like, please let me know, because at some point I don't lose track. I did that in a civic debate once, and Judy Washley-Lees was like waving her hands wildly in the air on television. Go back and have a look. I apologize, Mr. Gervais. So we will be hearing from from Gary Gervais of the Green Party on this. I'll just reread the question. So how quickly would your government honor its legal obligations to provide long-term funding for Jordan's Principle and resolve the critical backlog of applications and payment delays? And now you do have 2 minutes.
Thanks for the question. The Green Party of Canada recognizes Jordan's Principle not just as a legal obligation, but as a moral and human rights imperative. If elected, a Green government would act immediately to fulfill the full promise of Jordan's Principle. That means ensuring long-term, stable funding to eliminate the backlog of applications and end the harmful delays in service and payment. The federal government has a legal and ethical responsibility to ensure First Nations children receive the same level of care and support as any other child in Canada, without delay and without jurisdictional wrangling. And just an aside on the jurisdictional wrangling in Canada, the federal and provincial governments always pointing fingers at each other. And back in 2012, when I was a school trustee and chair of the board for Louis Riel School Division, I was at an event where we were talking about Indigenous education in Canada, and our former Prime Minister Paul Martin was there. And I stood up in front of the crowd and asked him, why is it that Indigenous children receive 30% less funding than kids off reserve or other in the public school system? And he got really annoyed at the answer. But part of that was frustration, but part of it was that they just weren't getting it done. And so we don't want to hear excuses and finger pointing between levels of government. Just fix it. We'd begin by working with full partnership with First Nations leadership to implement community-led solutions, streamline the application process, and make funding automatic for services that are already recognized as essential. The Greens are committed to fully implementing the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal's orders on Jordan's Principle and to funding First Nations child and family services based on actual need, not capped budgets. Justice delayed is justice denied. For too long, Indigenous children have waited. The time is now, and the Green Party will make this a day one priority.
Thank you, Mr. Gervais. And now, if re-elected, how would your government honor the legal obligation to provide long-term funding for Jordan's Principle and resolve the critical backlog of application and payment delays? This goes to the Liberal Party candidate now, Ian McIntyre.
Thank you. I agree with my previous speakers about how important Jordan's Principle is and what it has done for those individuals who have been granted funds. As a former teacher, as a retired teacher, I have seen those applications for Jordan's Principles. I have been involved in the development of some of those applications. And you're right. The backlog is too much and wait time is too long. So a re-elected Liberal government will firstly address those needs. Get rid of the backlog. We did it for passports. I know we can do it for Jordan's Principle applications, and commit that money so that we can make sure that the individuals who need the money are getting the money. And the second part of that is that the government of Manitoba is helping us along with ensuring that it's going where it needs to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're at rebuttals or a challenge to anything that you... Oh, I did it again. Wow. Good thing you guys are on it and I'm not running.
It's not live radio.
It's not live. Apparently I can do better with live radio.
We
All right.
have one job, Marcy. We have one job. You're juggling.
All right. My morning show director will be laughing his head off right now. It is time, I apologize again, to hear from Cam Scott of the Communist Party of Canada. You have 2 minutes to respond to the question.
As our program says, we would consider this a cause for immediate emergency action. If elected, Jordan's Principle originates from a case here in Manitoba of Jordan Anderson, and I agree with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs and Grand Chief Kyra Wilson that this is a legal commitment and not a budget line to be fussed over. The present shortfalls speak to the depth of targeted neglect and underdevelopment that continues to characterize Canadian colonialism, in our view. I presume we all saw the news earlier this week naming a 140,000 case backlog, and the federal government declining to cover administrative costs and clamping down on supposed abuse of the principle. I'll be blunt, it's my concern that the clawing back of this program on grounds of extravagance and abuse resembles old racist and classist tropes that are wielded against people who are accessing already inadequate social services. Jordan's principle is meant to prevent governments from endlessly passing the buck, but now colonial underdevelopment seems to collide larger designs on austerity. And I believe that's really a distraction from a failure to deliver on a non-negotiable prerequisite to reconciliation. The full implementation of Jordan's principle is the third call to action by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And for the government to say it's not operationally feasible, feasibility is often a statement of values. And I would offer that $30 billion in military spending isn't feasible when there's a colonial legacy to address here at home.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And now we are into 1-minute rebuttals. We'll continue down the line. So we will begin with Leah Gazan of the NDP. You have 1 minute to add or rebut anything you've heard.
So I just want to add there's a normalization of incremental justice when it impacts certain groups. And it was not surprising that out of the gate, Mark Carney got rid of the Minister for Disabilities, the Minister for Seniors, the Minister for Women and Gender Equality, the Minister of Labor. And this is really disturbing because it shows the kind of priorities, what is a priority and what is not a priority. When Paul Martin was in, he put a 2% cap on Indigenous people, on First Nations people. This has cost lives, including in the case of Jordan Anderson and other First Nations children who are provided with secondary treatment, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education. Basic human rights, whether it's on or off reserve, continues to be supported at all levels of government. It's time for that to change without excuses.
Thank you, Leah Gazan. Gary Gervais of the Green Party, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, just kind of back to the points before. A lot of this is processing, and there's this huge backlog of applications. So that's one thing Green Party would do, is actually allocate immediate emergency funding so we could work through this, establish some regional processing hubs, like really pragmatic solutions to this, and following up from that, also develop some real-time tracking and transparency systems. Because, as we said before, this is an imperative. This is required by law. So now it's just a case of making it happen.
Thank you. And the final minute on this topic to Ian McIntyre of the Liberal, pardon me, not the final minute. You got yours. I see you, finally. I'm seeing everybody down the road. There's only 4 of you. Like, what would I do if there were 10? It's your turn for your minute and your rebuttal. Ian McIntyre of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. I come from it from a unique perspective, as from a teacher perspective, in that this work and the money that's allocated to do this work has fundamentally changed and helped and grown those kids who are in need of that money. And so we have seen that, and if I get to go to Ottawa, that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be committed to. I'm going to be committed to ensuring that money is, thank you, that money is provided, that money is spent, and I have to agree with my Green Party colleague here. Some emergency funding for that would be an excellent idea. Thank you.
Thank you. And now our final minute on the topic to Cam Scott of the Communist Party.
And I think you're number 3.
I'll say something that veers a little bit into personal anecdote, I suppose, because I wanted to speak as well about a disturbing trend that I see in the reporting on this matter that tries to make some of the requests around Jordan's Principles seem frivolous by itemizing specific recreational activities and the sorts of things that people are using this program for. I have been helping to take care of a couple of kids in foster care, right? And I've seen up close, we could talk about CFS as continuation of colonial means and so on. But so often we see kids apprehended because their families are not in any sense supported. But then, the kids that I'm raising have suddenly all of these rich extracurricular supports that their parents were never furnished in the first place. And I see every day how this improves their quality of life. And you could condescend to it by being like, oh, why is the government paying for sailing lessons? Why is the government paying for watercolor? It makes a huge difference.
Thank you. All right, 2 questions down, 1 to go in our lightning round. Thank you, candidates. Now we open up our final question before we get into a number of quick questions with the paddles. So question number 3 is this. 41% of Canadians in poverty have disabilities. Currently, there is no provincial or territorial disability assistance payment that raises people above the poverty line. Many Canadians would like to see the Canada Disability Benefit, the CDB, be more effective at lifting people with disabilities out of poverty. Your questions, candidate, is this. If elected, what would your party do to make the CDB more effective at reducing poverty and decreasing red tape, or would you recommend another program entirely? The first person to respond, 2 minutes, is Gary Gervais of the Green Party.
Thank you. Insufficient provincial or territorial disability assistance has left far too many Canadians struggling to make ends meet. The CDB represents an important step toward alleviating this issue, but its current level of support is not enough to lift people with disabilities out of poverty. If elected, the Green Party would advocate for the following key measures to make the CDB more effective at reducing poverty and cutting down on bureaucratic red tape. The Green Party believes that the current maximum annual payment of $2,400 is insufficient to meet the needs of Canadians with disabilities. We had worked to increase this payment to ensure that it is a meaningful income supplement that can genuinely help lift people with disabilities out of poverty. This increase should be tied to the cost of living and regularly adjusted to ensure it keeps pace with inflation and changing economic conditions. Next, the Green Party understands that the challenges faced by individuals navigating complex bureaucratic systems. To make the CDB more accessible, we would focus on reducing the administrative barriers and simplifying the application process. This would include ensuring that more Canadians automatically qualify based on their existing eligibility for other support programs such as the Disability Tax Credit, and enhancing the use of technology to make application processes easier and more accessible. The Green Party supports the creation of a national strategy to promote inclusive employment for people with disabilities, working alongside the CDB to help reduce poverty. This strategy would include incentives for employers to hire people with disabilities, accessible workplace accommodations, and initiatives to remove barriers to employment. By focusing on both income support and employment opportunities, we can ensure that people with disabilities have the resources they need to live with integrity and independence. Finally, in the longer term, the Green Party advocates for the introduction of a guaranteed livable income, which ensure that every Canadian, including those with disabilities, receives a basic level of income sufficient to meet their needs.
Thank you, Mr. Gervais. The second person to respond will be Ian McIntyre of the Liberal Party. Mr. McIntyre, you'll have 2 minutes. Question is, once again, if elected or re-elected, in your case, representing the Liberals, what would your party do to make the CDB more effective at reducing poverty, decreasing red tape, or would you switch gears? Would you recommend another program entirely? Your 2 minutes starts now.
Let me just bring you back when we were when the discussions were being held at Parliament Hill about the different programs that were going to be offered, such as the UTIP program, which helps, which gives accessibility to apprenticeship and to the employer, $8,000 to the apprentice, $10,000 to the employer. All along, the Conservatives were saying, yeah, we support it, we support it, we support it, until it got to the money. And then on the budget, no, They voted against it. So that's where they stand on disability issues. The Conservatives left $97 million unspent. Mr. Poilievre was the minister. He left $97 million unspent when they were in government. So the Liberals, now that we have the 2024 budget, they've put $240 million into eliminating the cost for doctor slips. We have a $200 a month benefit coming starting in July. We also have, this is one of the most important pieces, and that is an advisory board advising the CRA from the disability community. And poverty reduction is one of the issues that they're looking at. And so we have that advisory board is one of the most important things. They will make recommendations to the CRA, and the CRA will have to act on that. There are some other financial issues that are involved, but one of the biggest issues, it's not been advertised. And so we have to get back in power, or get back to Ottawa, so that we can start advertising what those things are for individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. And now to the question of the CDB, making it more effective to reduce poverty, decreasing red tape, or whether or not you'd recommend another program entirely. Your 2 minutes now is to Mr. Cam Scott of the Communist Party.
Our platform addresses this directly. We propose to immediately double the Canada Disability Benefit at its present levels as soon as tomorrow, but this is only an immediate stopgap to ensure that available supports are not clawed back until the implementation of a guaranteed annual livable income to replace sub-poverty rates of existing programs as possible. This is a little funny to say because this is new, and the Canada Disability Benefit is the result of such powerful advocacy, and yet it's being rolled out at inadequate levels. We're in a serious cost of living crisis. $200 a month is unsuitable to a single grocery bill. What about rent, medication, and other necessary supports? And then the benefits incrementally clawed back for every dollar of household income above subsistence levels. Really, it's accompanied by all of these penalties and conditions, as many here know firsthand. The disability tax credit is accompanied by far too many conditions, in addition to a processing backlog, and the entire situation, honestly, when you confront it up close, seems careless and arbitrary and really dealing in insultingly low sums that oblige people to make truly awful decisions between medical treatments and food or rent. So we wish to double it tomorrow and then to replace it with something far more all-encompassing.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And now for the final 2 minutes before rebuttal, we have Leah Gazan of the NDP. If elected, what would your party do to make the Canada Disability Benefit more effective to reduce poverty, decreasing red tape, or would you go a different direction and recommend another program? You have 2 minutes.
So we know that advocates have indicated clearly that the Canada Disability Benefit limits eligibility, restricts access, and results in clawbacks of existing income supports that erode its value entirely. So unless provinces and territories exempt the CDB as income in their calculations of social assistance, the benefit will leave people no further ahead. And we are saying this isn't acceptable. So the NDP promises to double the Canada Disability Benefit, but it's also essential that the federal government ensure that provinces and territories don't claw it back. And as people in the room probably know, I have long advocated for a guaranteed livable basic income in addition to other programs and supports meant to meet specific and special needs. The Liberals and Conservatives teamed up to defeat my bill, Bill C-223, not even allowing it to go to study. We need to create a guaranteed livable basic income, and we can't stop until we can ensure that everybody across the country lives in dignity, and that we're doing we are fulfilling our obligations as elected officials to uphold our Canadian Charter to make sure everybody lives in dignity and with security. It's time for a guaranteed livable income in addition to other specific and other supports, including pharmacare, including a universal dental care plan, including to affordable rent geared to income housing, and we need to stop using public dollars to fund corporate landlords, particularly in the province of Manitoba. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you, candidates. Now we're at 1 minute rebuttals. We begin with the Green Party and Gary Gervais.
This would be more fun, Marcy, if we had a lot more diversive stances on some of these issues. But
You say that, but have you been at those debates?
yeah, sure. Fair enough. Not to use all my time, but going back to the guaranteed livable income, which Ms. Gazan was just talking about, I'm going to, as a rebuttal, put the question to the Liberals why they defeated that motion and why they're not in favor of it.
Which motion?
About the guaranteed livable income. That's what you're talking about. Yeah. Bill 223.
Mr. McIntyre, you can use your time to respond, and then you have a minute to...
I have no idea. I don't have any. I don't know. Sorry. As a rebuttal, I said in one of my earlier comments that 8 provinces have passed an Accessibility Act. Manitoba is one of those provinces, and Manitoba has agreed with the federal government that it will not claw back the disability benefit. They're not going to claw back. So that's a big step. So I think that might be news to some of the other candidates here, but they have agreed not to do that. You add to that the pharmacare, and you add to that to the dental care, and yes, we have a long way to go, but we're moving forward, and we are making sure that many little pieces are being put into the jigsaw, and eventually we're going to have that big jigsaw puzzle finished. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, for his minute, Cam Scott will respond from the Communist Party.
Yes, well, I think that I might wish to add something about some of the ways in which things are clawed back. The Conservatives aren't here, but I want to point out a kind of peculiar moment in 2018. This is before there was such a thing as the Canada Disability Benefit, when Poilievre appeared very concerned suddenly with protecting people who receive disability benefits from having their supports clawed back should they find work. Right? Yeah. But this is the same Poilievre who wants to raise the age of retirement and who argued against compensation for residential school survivors in order to engender the values of hard work and independence. Mm-hmm. So I think we're a party of workers. A communist perspective here is valuable. I think that Poilievre's vision in this instance was to treat the paltry benefits that are available at present as a subsidy to private employers who were otherwise offering insecure and intermittent work to a precarious section of workers. I was speaking to someone the other day who wasn't paid by their employer for a full year of 30-plus hour work weeks because the employer was too happy to treat them like an intern who was otherwise secured by disability, right? So we need to be vigilant about these sorts of designs as well.
Thank you. And our final minute on this topic is Leah Gazan, as you can see from the NDP.
Thank you so much. What I want to say is we're talking about providing support to individuals. You know, nobody ever questions when the government gives corporate handouts or handouts to corporations like $50 million to MasterCard, or the fact that the first folks that were bailed out in the pandemic was big oil companies. Yet we are talking about hundreds of thousands of people across the country that are not living in dignity. Poverty is a policy choice. The fact that so many folks in the disability community continue to live in poverty, that is a policy choice. And I know that the NDP, and certainly, I'm sure most folks at the table would agree with me that we need to make choices to ensure that everybody in the country can live with human rights, have what they need, including housing, food security, pharmacare, and a guaranteed livable basic income.
Thank you, candidates. That's our 3 questions. So we'll get you to get your paddles out. We've made it to the paddle portion. And I think I got through the rebuttals without screwing that up. So vote for me. Oh, wait, I'm not running. Everyone's got their paddles out? Okay, let's practice. What does it look like when you hold up yes? And no. Absolutely. Okay, so absolutely excellent point, for sure. You're welcome. So we will ask you to grab the mic and we'll go down the line. And we'll just continue to do that and get answers. You should still do the paddles, I think. Yeah, people dig the paddles too. Yeah. We'll be inclusive in both ways. Okay, everyone ready for lightning round? Candidates ready. And I can also, maybe what I'll do is, if I'm reading them correctly, I'll say yes, no, yeah, like I'll read them. We'll see how this goes. We'll see how it goes. I'll say it, yeah. Then you guys don't have to clunk around with the mics as well. I think that'll be easier. Okay. Question number 1. If elected, will your party commit to creating a minimum of 50,000 net new public, nonprofit, and co-op housing units every year for 10 years, with 25% of those units being accessible, starting with your first budget? Do I need to repeat the question? No? Okay. So we're looking for yes or no. 50,000 net new nonprofit housing units every year, 25%. We have yes, 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 and yes all across the board. Candidates, thank you. We can clap for them if you wish. Question number 2, if elected, will your party ensure that all of these units are targeted to those experiencing core housing need and have rents permanently set at no more than 30% of household income? We have yes, 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 and yes across the board.
We need the conservative here.
If elected, will your party commit to raising the rates for CPP?
Oh.
Commit to raising the rates for CPP. Again, we have yeses across the board. Yes, 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 and yes from all parties. Next question, if elected, will your party commit to supporting the public service in their goal to hire a minimum of 5,000 people living with disabilities by 2025?
Yes.
Yes, across the board, audible yeses from the candidates on those questions?
So just to was that
Yes.
2025?
If elected, will your party commit to supporting the public service in their goal of hiring a minimum of 5,000 people with disabilities? It's worded as by 2025.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
end of 2025?
End of 2025, yeah.
Okay, apologies. Yep. Exactly, it is.
We all failed.
If elected, will your party maintain the a dental care plan for people living with disabilities? Yes, across the board. Thank yous from the crowd. If elected, would your party support a basic income for people with disabilities? Yes, across the board for all parties.
I'm going to say yes, but I don't know.
Ian McIntyre saying yes, but unsure.
I am not sure what the party's position is on
Supporting a basic income for people with
I've been booed
disabilities?
before, but I'm unsure what the party's position is on that. But for me, yes.
Okay, so making clear your position on this is yes, but you're unclear what your party stance is. Thank you for clarifying. And finally, if elected, will your party support the Canadian Transportation Agency to make air transportation accessible? And we have big yeses, it looks like, the way they're all holding their cards. All parties have said yes to all questions. Thank you, candidates. Thank you. All right, round of applause for this section. So we find ourselves at closing statements, and each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. But I feel like we can give you 2.5, because we're ahead of time, and I actually, in opening statements, was supposed to give you each 1.5 minutes. And I took away your 30 seconds. So I'm putting it back. So let's give him 2.5. All right. No early cowbell. So you can take up to 2.5 if you wish, candidates, for closing statements, if that's okay. And we do begin this time with the Liberal Party of Canada and Ian McIntyre.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here this evening and sharing with you some of my thoughts and my party's positions on different topics. I want to thank the ASL interpreters. They've been working hard. I don't know if you watch, but I catch them every once in a while in my eyesight, and I really thank the people that are here and those that are watching on Roger. Marcy, thank you. Candidates, thank you. And organizing committee, thank you very much. I do like the cowbell. I don't like the 30-second or the closing. But just to wrap up, the Liberal government has moved very far in terms of making sure that there are things and the Accessibility Act is being funded. And again, when we get back to Ottawa, and my hope is that I'm there, I am 100% committed to ensuring that individuals with disabilities, whether seen or whether hidden, are going to be able to live within the society with everything that they deserve and everything that they need, whether it be rent, 30% I think was the percentage that was used earlier, and pharmacare, dental care, and making sure that our kids are fed at school is very important as well. And I promise that if elected, I will be working hard on Jordan's Principle as well. I really appreciate the opportunity of being here. Thank you. Miigwech. Merci.
Thank you. And now we move to Cam Scott from the Communist Party of Canada for closing.
Thank you. Every topic of lived concern that we've touched on tonight eventually collides the limits of the profit system. The Canada Disability Benefit, adequate support for Indigenous families as per Jordan's Principle and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the inadequate scope of present legislation for true accessibility. None of these related problems can be addressed so long as politics remains beholden in this country to corporate interests, and our government is tasked with the implementation of sweeping austerity amid record profits for monopolies. While many living on disability choose between food and medicine, top grocery CEOs are making millions of dollars a year in this country. So a large part of why we run, again, as a small party but a party of action, is to remind electors that Canada is a very wealthy country in which far-reaching reforms such as we've discussed today could be implemented tomorrow where there's the political will. I think I also want to say something a little more targeted. We're watching the mainstreaming of an explicitly revengeful far-right politics that's targeting diversity and inclusion as offices of governments, but also as values. And we should see the absence of the Conservative and People's parties from forums like this, not as a negligence on their part, but as a threat on very many vulnerable people, a threat on working people, on disabled people living with disabilities. I'm becoming tongue-tied for my apoplexy at the right, and queer and trans youth, migrant workers. Really, the threat from the right is dire, and it's time to get organized at the ballot, but afterwards as well. Thank you.
Leah Gazan of the NDP, your closing statement, please.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank all the organizers for putting this really critical debate together. Marcy, I see you at so many things. Thanks for being so wonderful, and to all the candidates here. What we're seeing is a policy choice, and what I've learned just in the short time I've been an elected official is that corporate greed corporations are becoming elected officials are becoming more and more beholden to corporations. And I agree with my friend Cam. I agree that there's an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was why I was so shocked when Carney was elected that he got rid of women and gender equality, the Minister of Seniors, the Minister of Disabilities. He put Crown Indigenous Relations with the Justice Ministry. And that sends a clear message who is a priority and who is not. And for the first time since 1909, he got rid of the Minister of Labor. So we do have a fight on our hands, and we need to ensure that in Canada we don't end up like the States with a two-party system that moves further and further and further to the right, that it is critical to have dissenting voices that will stand up for human rights, that will stand up for equality, that will stand up and hold those in power to put in programs in place like a guaranteed livable basic income, like the NDP did with dental care, like the NDP did with pharmacare, and like the NDP will continue to do to expand pharmacare in the country. We also need to hold governments account for the fact that they are lining the pockets of corporate landlords, that any public funds need to go into public housing and public programs, that those that are the very richest in society don't need support. Fossil fuel companies, big corporations, let's put the money into where it's needed, into supporting the disability community, guaranteed livable basic income, rent geared to income, accessible, affordable housing, and a pharmacare plan.
And the final closing statement to Gary Gervais of the Green Party.
Did you have your closing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going
I
to call
can
you
go
off,
again.
but
I can talk about it.
It took me all night, but I got that one.
Yeah, as well, thank you to the organizers. This has been a really great event, and it's been a good discussion up here. And one of the key pieces to all this is funding it, obviously. And while the Green Party is committed to improving the Canada Disability Benefit and these other social programs, we also recognize that the bigger problem lies in the structure of our economic system. Our current economic model, which is largely based on endless growth measured by gross domestic product, inherently leads to inequalities, including the perpetuation of poverty among vulnerable groups such as people with disabilities. The underlying issue is that GDP growth often comes at the expense of environmental sustainability, social equity, and the well-being of marginalized communities. The pursuit of constant growth has led to a system where economic structure success is measured by increased consumption, corporate profits, and the expansion of industries, rather than by improving the quality of life, social welfare, and environmental sustainability. The real long-term solution lies in rethinking our approach to economics entirely. One alternative that the Green Party strongly supports is regenerative economics, a framework that focuses on creating an economy that meets the needs of all people within the means of the planet instead of chasing infinite growth. It prioritizes sustainable development, social well-being, and equity. In this new model, we would aim to create a safe and just space for humanity where everyone's basic needs, such as healthcare, housing, and education, are met, while also respecting the planet's ecological boundaries. By shifting away from GDP as the sole measure of success and focusing on a balance between human well-being and environmental health, we can build a more inclusive and sustainable economy. This approach would ensure that people with disabilities and other marginalized groups are not left behind in a system that values growth over equity. By adopting regenerative economics, we could not only make the Canada Disability Benefit more effective, but also create a society where the focus is on enhancing the quality of life for all Canadians, not just increasing wealth for a few. This paradigm shift is critical if we are to address the root cause of poverty, inequality, and environmental degradation in the long run.
Thank you very much, candidates. And if we can have a really, really big round of applause. They have so many events they do. Yeah. There's a lot of different events, and it's a lot of, it's a lot of time to be putting in, as I said at the beginning, to put your name forward and to come out and to be accessible. And so thanks very much to Cam Scott of the Communist Party, to Leah Gazan of the NDP, to Ian McIntyre of the Liberal Party, to Gary Gervais of the Green Party. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let me check with the organizers then. Melissa, do you want, I can navigate questions. I'm not sure if we'll have to see the candidates, because of timing, the candidates we had changed and not had opportunity for questions. There is some time. Normally I wouldn't put anyone on the spot here, but if we take the last 10 minutes to 8 o'clock, since that's when our event was going to go, are you open to questions from the floor? Yes?
Real
Okay.
easy ones. Real easy ones. Easy.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll help to navigate, obviously, anything that should come up. And because we are asking you candidates to be open to this, and obviously we don't know what's going to come from the floor, we'll make sure that everybody's respectful and clear, and that we ask good questions of our candidates in the spirit of democracy. So thank you all for agreeing. Okay, so what we need then is a microphone to go to the floor. Is this on? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Okay. Is there someone, are you handing it? Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll take 10 minutes and we'll do some questions. Front row, go ahead, and then there are 3 more. We'll ask for your hands up. Actually, if you have questions to make, so I can buy the time, we'll get the mic over to you. We'll get your hands up after. So can you state your name and ask who you're posing your question to, please?
My name is Sandra Somerville, and I'm going to go to all 4 of you. In Winnipeg, we had 185 Smith Street. It housed many senior citizens. It's no longer housing seniors. We had Lions Place. It was housing senior citizens. It's no longer dedicated to seniors. But in our hospitals, we've got many, many, many seniors occupying hospitals' beds because there's no place for them to go. So how are we going to respond when, in fact, the Panama Papers decidedly identified Canadians who were exporting money out of the country, not paying their fair share of taxes, and those taxes would go a lot to helping maintain seniors' housing and build more seniors' housing that is accessible, affordable, and decent. How do we, like Mark Carney knew all about the money escaping Canada. He was ahead of Bank of Canada.
What's the question?
How are we going to support people getting housing who need accessible housing as seniors or as just normal citizens when the money's flying out of this country, not taxed?
Okay. Okay. Now I'm just going to have to go back to where we began, which will be here, because everyone had first chance. So for fairness, I'll go back to Mr. Scott to respond. I think what we'll do is we will have each candidate respond, and maybe we'll ask, be as brief as you need to be. But if you want to go on, we'll kind of just have to do this on the fly, as I would on radio. So go for it, Mr. Scott.
Sure. That's a fantastic question. I will be very quick. It will surprise no one here that the Communist Party of Canada is for quite steep income tax and for taking that matter well in hand. And also, there are other questions as well in terms of the necessity of millions of units of high-quality rent-geared-to-income public housing. We are terribly concerned with a skyrocketing military budget that is eroding Canadian sovereignty. We don't need to be making a 2%. 2% of our GDP does not need to go to defense spending. It should be going to public housing in Canada tomorrow. Also, we have the power to expropriate buildings from landlords that are not doing anything of any public good whatsoever, and we could start doing that tomorrow.
Okay. Leah Gazan from the NDP.
So I was actually at Lions Place today, and one thing is really clear from our community. Public housing needs to stay in public hands, and any public dollars needs to go towards public housing. In the case of Lions Place, that was public housing that was given to a big corporation, and the former progressive conservative provincial government subsidized rents for big corporations. Public housing needs to stay public, and any programs that are being put in place by the federal government, like these co-investment funds that are funding big corporate landlords, needs to stop. Public dollars, public tax dollars need to go towards public housing, rent geared to income units.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Gary Gervais of the Green Party.
Yeah, I think it's easy to, point fingers and blame, and there's a lot of blame to go around. But I think I go back to it's the economic model system that we have, because when we think about our CPP, it's invested in all these things that have to keep growing forever. And growth is the ideology of cancer, right? And this is the problem with our economic model, is it has to keep growing forever. And that's where these buying up an apartment building like the one my mother used to manage and turning it into, for-profit housing. Again, there's room for for-profit housing, but this was a specific housing for 100 seniors that got flipped because someone could make an 8% on a real estate income trust. Right? And who's investing in that? We are, because our CPP is funding a lot of these corporations. So it's a bigger systemic issue. We can point our fingers, but eventually it kind of comes back to us in this growth mentality. We have to keep growing.
Mr. McIntyre for the Liberals, would you like to respond?
Thank you. So I'm going to be Debbie Downer. We know that housing is a responsibility of the provincial government. But that doesn't stop the federal government from providing monies, public monies, to the provincial government in order to help in maintaining or building them. But one of the things that I want to do, and one of the things that I've talked to Liberal colleagues about, was investing in the existing housing to upgrade them, because they're built and then they're left. And there's no upgrades, there's no, the accessibility is not, the accessibility for those that are disabled are not there. And we need to, the public money should be, first of all, going to making sure that the livable homes are livable. Thank you.
So it is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. I'm going to make the call so our candidates don't have to, we can be reasonable here. So 8:10. We're going to wrap, if that's okay. So that means we're going to boogie. So we have 1, 2 questions, and there was another one here. So there's 3, there's 4. So please pose the question briefly, and we will start with, where's the microphone? Here? Okay. Please pose the question.
Okay, well, I have a little different question, and that is, if your party is elected, will your party immediately call for a bilateral ceasefire, complete and comprehensible, and in withdrawal of any trade agreements with the
Can you
with the
just speak
state
a
of
little more
Israel?
into the mic? Sorry. We lost you at, will your party, if elected, call for a bilateral ceasefire?
Right away, immediately.
Where?
Israel. And have no further trade with Israel as long as the devastation that is being wreaked over Gaza and the repression in the West Bank and the illegal annexation of East Jerusalem.
So the question's about an immediate ceasefire and to have no further trade with Israel. Did I hear it correctly? Yes? Okay. We're going to start. We started with Mr. Scott. I believe we start then with Leah Gazan of the NDP.
Here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think the NDP has been very public in calling for an immediate ceasefire and an arms embargo, and stopping trade, and also upholding the ICC ruling, ICJ ruling.
Mr. Gervais?
Yeah, the Green Party position is that we support the UN resolution to as Palestine as a state, independent state. So, yeah.
Mr. McIntyre?
Former Prime Minister has asked for a ceasefire. We, as a Liberal Party, believe in a two-party state system there. Trade, what a mess. It's a mess.
And Mr. Scott?
Yes, the Communist Party of Canada supports a ceasefire and an arms embargo, but also on the model of the international campaign for boycott, divestment, and sanctions modeled on the heroic effort against South African apartheid. We think that Canada should have absolutely no trade with Israel until the settlements are removed and the apartheid is lifted, the Palestinians have a state. The successful motion for a ceasefire and an arms embargo that went before Canada's parliament had language pertaining to the Palestinian right of return for 1948 refugees stripped away from it, and we should like to see that as well.
Thank you. In the back, Kirby, go ahead. What's your question?
Hi, hello friends. My name is Kirby, and I would like the candidates to discuss the current federal government's one of its most successful programs, MAID. Right now, 1 in 20 Canadians is using MAID. Or sorry, what was the stat? 1 in 20 Canadians is dying using MAID, and I would like to know what your parties are doing so that I'm not losing friends that actually just need housing and food and jobs. And I know that we've talked about it already, but specific to MAID.
So specific to medical assistance in dying is the question. You're looking for the party's stance. Sorry, Kirby, for clarity. Their stance on MAID or their stance on ending MAID, or what is the specific question?
I suppose it's the stance on like how, right now Canada is very successful at using MAID for a lot of its citizens instead of providing the social equity supports that we need. So how do we change MAID? Because I don't think we should get rid of it. I do think people should have an option to choose when they end their lives.
But it's leaving a vulnerability there that you
Correct.
feel like that is not being discussed.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I'll go first then to Gary Gervais of the Green Party.
Yeah, and I think this is where the Green Party's guaranteed livable income would really help, because then it would provide those, that basic livable income for people in any situation to not be put in a situation where they're making these choices, and specific to MAID, where they're, making choices based on their income, not actually their health and their desires and well-being.
Ian McIntyre from the Liberal Party.
We believe that right now MAID is the policy of the day of the government, and we support the rules around having doctors being involved in that decision. It's unfortunate that some individuals have those mental health issues or those issues that are facing them to make dire decisions, and financial as well. And but we do believe that doctors' involvement in that is very important.
To Cam Scott now from the Communist Party.
Yeah, Canada has become something of a case study in this. It's an enormity. We're quite infamous internationally if you look at the coverage of the ways in which the MAID program has actually interacted with policies of brutal austerity and drastic shortfalls in all the necessaries for a dignified life. It's something that I think our entire program addresses holistically, whether we speak about full employment, the defense and the expansion of health care, a guaranteed livable income for those unable to work. All of these things aggregately ought to make MAID what it should be, is something where people who absolutely require it can choose the way that they end their life, but it is not something that people under tremendous economic duress and psychological strain because of the predations of capitalism and the difficulties of surviving this system rely upon to escape debt and to escape all kinds of everyday cruelty that's been normalized in this system. It's a travesty. Yeah.
Leah Gazan from the NDP.
I want to thank you for that question, and this is certainly that we debated a lot in the House when I was there, and I often talk about false choice. We don't have, for example, what I've talked about, a guaranteed livable basic income. So many people, especially with disabilities, are living in really, really destitute poverty without adequate housing, accessible housing. We are still debating whether we should have a pharmacare plan so that people can access medication, and people are living in chronic, debilitating pain. So if we are going to talk about MAID and people making choices and having autonomy over their bodies, then we also have to give people real choice. Guaranteed livable basic income, affordable housing with rent geared to income that's accessible, access to medication, access to a healthcare system that's becoming more and more privatized through, by the day, as we see across the country. And so I think we need to have real discussions. And if people are going to talk about the right to choose the end of life, then let's really talk about choice and make sure that everybody has what they need to live in dignity to be able to make a real choice.
I believe we have 2 more questions on the floor. Is that correct? So these are the last 2 questions, wherever the microphone is.
Hi.
Sorry. So we have 3 more questions then. Is that correct? So we have 4 minutes. I'm not sure. So your hand has been up the longest. I apologize because I have a feeling that, sir, this is very difficult because now we're going to run out of time. So I'm gonna. I totally appreciate that, but I also appreciate when candidates are invited to an event and they're under a certain format, right? And they're prepared for the accessibility questions, and we open to the floor. No, I'm just being respectful also of their preparation and time. Yep, I am. Well, but I'm also.
Okay, can I ask my question?
No, I just want to. Yeah, I will in a moment, sir. I just want to make this clear, though.
Yeah, we know what the format is.
No, I know. I just want to make this clear, though.
Okay.
And this is myself speaking on behalf of democracy, just trying to make it fair for all of us here in the room. And it's only also because they also hear, if someone here were to say, no, I'm not staying, how would they look? So obviously they're going to stay. I want to be mindful of the candidate's time. So if it is 3 questions and we're going to go to 8:15, I will call it closed. So at some point, we do have to close our evening, be respectful here. So if you'd like to ask your question,
yeah, thank
please.
you, Marcy. Thank you for all the candidates and the incumbents for showing up today. It's unfortunate that the Conservatives didn't show up. And that might reflect on the way they also voted, as was brought out to us on some of the budget concerns with persons with disability.
What is your question? If you could put your mic right in, we're having trouble hearing you.
My preamble, sorry.
That's okay.
So my concern is how we deal with Canada internationally. I first got my start in disability issues with Disabilities Peoples International through the Canadian Mental Health Association. And the question is to the NDP Member of Parliament about the comment she made in her preamble, which was that Canada is not signing on to the international disability portion or declaration that's there. Could you tell us what you did in regards to working with this situation?
Thank you so much. Actually, Canada has signed on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We're just not upholding it. Canada has signed on to all sorts of conventions, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and they're not upholding it. My job in opposition has been holding the government to account, and I'll continue to do that. Thank you. Yeah, so some of the things that I've done, one of the key initiatives that I have led is for a guaranteed livable basic income and to push for greater investment in affordable housing with rent geared to income within our community. I'm going to continue to push for that, and I'm going to continue to push for rent controls so that people aren't being gouged by corporate landlords and that is winding them up on the streets like we've seen with many seniors in the riding.
Okay, so now we're at a situation where you've posed a question to a candidate. So for the balance of fairness, I'll invite the other candidates if they'd like to weigh in to answer, but because it was a targeted question, we can move on. It's up to you, candidates.
Move on.
Okay, we'll move to the next question then. So we will take your question then. If we could get a microphone there, thank you very much. It's coming. You're welcome.
Yes, I would like to ask what your political parties stand or how you want to address the wait times of people with disabilities when they have a human rights complaint. The wait time is 18 to 2 years for it to be processed. So, and you do know, I don't have the number, but most probably I think that the Manitoba Human Rights Commission, most of their complaints are from the disabled community, the discrimination and the barriers that they are facing. So for us, in our case, it's the barriers to inclusive education. So I wanted to ask your political party how you make it easy for already the vulnerable sector when the system is not already working. So, and that is our only platform to have assistance. Thank you.
Okay, now I have lost track. I think the first to answer is probably going to be Ian.
Sure.
Ian McIntyre of the Liberals.
Hi. Human Rights Commission, again, I'm Debbie Downer. It's a provincial organization and is responsible to the provincial government. I'm not sure why there is a backlog. I know in order for peoples with disabilities to be going through applications, there's a new system called the Navigator program, which is online, and that sometimes has a problem for people with disabilities as well. But there is the Navigator program, and that enables individuals to go there and work directly with CRA in order to get tax credits and signed up for the different programs.
Mr. Gervais, we're going to come back this way, I think.
Yeah, I can just speak to personal experience with on 2 occasions. One was when I was on the school board, and I can empathize that it must be incredibly hard for someone filing those complaints, because we were responding as a school board to a particular complaint, and it dragged on for a year, 2 years, and we had an administrative team who was being paid to deal with it. We had lawyers to consult, so there's definitely an imbalance there, and the timing that it just takes to get through it. So I can completely empathize. I'm not sure what the answer is, how to speed that up, but it's clearly disadvantaging the complainants.
Leah Gazan, the NDP perspective on this question?
So one of the things that, it's a different issue, but I think it's really necessary with the disability community is to have a third-party ombudsperson that works as an advocate for those that are filing complaints and also provides oversight, because it actually is not the province, it's the federal government is also responsible for addressing human rights matters of all peoples federally, that there should be independent oversight to see how the federal government is meeting its legal obligations to uphold the human rights of the disability community.
And Cam Scott, your response?
Yeah, likewise, I think as cascading failures of so many institutions proliferate occasions for complaints, we need to expand but also democratize those often very opaque and foreboding offices. I can share, I needn't on microphone now, some very frustrating personal experiences of trying to get through to human rights officers and commissions and so on, and it's very nearly impossible. So, I wouldn't say that I have a compact answer, but I appreciate the agonizing obstacles that face any such process.
Thank you. And our final question will come from the front row then.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Wall. I'm actually the candidate for the Animal Protection Party of Canada for Winnipeg Centre. I was invited to the debate, but I thought this is not in my area of expertise, so I came here to learn as opposed to speak. The question that I have, and it'll be a quick answer, I'm sure, this question would apply to all Canadians, but I think those with disabilities in particular, because they are very susceptible to isolation and loneliness. Will the housing plans that other parties have include companion animal inclusive housing? We all know that service animals are allowed, but I'm specifically asking about companion animals. Thank you.
Yes or no on that? Can we do yes or no?
Do you want yes or no's or yeah?
I wouldn't mind responding to that.
Okay, Leah Gazan's asked to respond, so I'm just going to focus on the person that asked the question here, if I may. So we'll get responses then, if that's okay. So we'll start. It's Leah Gazan. It's your turn to go first, actually, for the NDP. So your response?
So I absolutely agree with you, Debbie. And also one of the areas people often don't look at is women or individuals fleeing gender-based violence that won't leave because they don't want to leave their pets. So in addition to housing that will accommodate animals, service animals, I think that, and I know the sector, the shelter sector is certainly looking at, finding avenues to ensure that owners can stay with their pets or find accommodations for those fleeing violence. Often animals are the number one support for people that are experiencing violence, and we need to think about housing, different kinds of housing for the diversity of our community. So I'm glad that you brought that up. I really appreciate that.
Cam Scott, did you want to respond further than the paddle? Yep.
Very briefly, I'm glad to see you here. I'm a lifelong vegan, and I admire your work. But I would say absolutely, because this is one of these very nearly arbitrary grounds on which housing discrimination often transpires, right? So absolutely, I think that we would strongly support such a thing.
Yeah.
Ian McIntyre, you had your yes paddle up, but did you want to say more?
I'm a papa to two fur babies, Vinny and Freddie, so I would not be able to live without them. So yes.
And Gary Gervais?
I only have one dog, but I still agree with Ian.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being respectful. Thank you for candidates for taking extra questions. That's stressful. And I really just want to thank the church. I want to thank the organizers today, the Manitoba League of Persons with Disabilities. I want to thank Melissa for having me here. You're welcome. There's a table at the back with information if you'd like before you go. And please consider checking out the Zoom and getting more information, and consider becoming a member of the MLPD as well. Good night. Drive safely. Remember, it's your vote on the 28th, so make sure you vote for your choice. Good night.